Hello, leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji. In this episode, get ready to be energized hearing from a physician executive in the pharmaceutical industry, passionate about helping bridge the gap between scientific innovation and clinical practice to help optimize health population outcomes. Dr. Sorsaburu is currently Vice President Global Medical Specialty Care for AbbVie. Sebastian is a physician executive with 20 years of portfolio management and leadership experience across research and development functions in multiple geographies and multiple therapeutic areas. He has an extensive experience in the pharma industry and focuses on building high-performing teams driven to deliver results that matter for patients and shape the future of healthcare. Sebastian is the author of more than 40 scientific documents since he graduated from med school in his home country, Argentina. Sebastian, I am so thrilled and excited to have you with me today.
Me too, Naji. Thank you for having me.
Let's start, if you can share with us your personal story. What really got you in healthcare, becoming a physician and then joining the pharmaceutical industry since more than 20 years now?
Well, I mean, that's interesting. Okay, let me. What got you in healthcare? I will go back a little bit to my elementary school years. These are definitely true story. Two things that actually shaped my passion for healthcare medicine at that moment. One was the TV show MASH. Probably many people will not even know what that is. An old TV show. It was about the U.S. show. Was about the Korean War, but it was basically physicians, right? The life of physicians with a lot of humor, and I used to watch it, and I was obsessed with it, and I said I want to be a doctor. So that was one of the first memories that I have about it. The second one, also for those years when I'm talking about 10, 11, 12, we had a big science fair in our district where the elementary school was every year, and I always dreamed for potentially one day winning that science fair. So we participated when I was 10 years of age, 11. And when it was in the last year, 7th grade, 12 years old, roughly speaking, we won. We built with our team a model of an artificial heart and circulatory system.
Oh, wow.
So I have a picture of that. And we won. And in our school and in our district. So for me, that was a huge achievement. I felt like I have won the Nobel Prize. So I really remember those two elements, one kind of through the TV and with a lot of humor and probably a lot of things I didn't understand. And the other one was tangible, right? In my hands, through the biology class, science, and then finally winning that. So from that on, when I went into high school, now I'm 13 years of age, or I have no other memory than thinking I'm gonna be a doctor, right? And then it went from there. So that's a little bit about how I started in how I went into medicine, and certainly then how from there I went to the pharmaceutical industry was also very, by chance, and we can go back to that later, but it was something completely unexpected, but definitely was an amazing journey. With respect to not just medicine, but with respect to who I am as a person, or some things that have shaped me, right, from my personal story, if you will.
Yeah.
There's two things I was thinking, I was reflecting as I knew we were going to connect, that I realized have defined me in many ways. I'm the older brother of 4 siblings, and I'm the father now of a 4-year-old son. And I mentioned those things because when I look back, I realized that from a personal journey perspective, right, I always felt a sense of responsibility toward my siblings. And I always worked hard to be the best role model possible. And I always wanted to be a father. I always remember wanting to be a father, which is something that came later in my life. But when I reflect back, as I said, when I think of those two factors, there's a lot of my life that is shaped, because of that. So I feel that I've been in a personal journey of good intentions, mistakes, hard work, preparation towards something that didn't happen at an early age in my life. Happened later, like being a father, setbacks, frustrations, pain, happiness, impact, and certainly continuous learning. So probably those are the things that have made me a lot of who I am today. I always keep that in the back of my mind when I reflect about the personal journey.
Oh, thanks for sharing this, Sebastian. You talked about what shaped you as a person, and then becoming a physician. You talk about responsibility, about being responsible for your siblings, for your son now who's 4. How did you take this when you became a physician and then joining the pharma industry? How do you see your responsibility towards your team? You talk a lot. I know how passionate you are about patients also and your people. So how did you take all this sense that shaped you, and how do you deliver this as a leader today across geographies in your pharma industry?
Yeah, my leadership journey, I think, is a great question, because as I was saying, my leadership journey clearly is anchored in my personal journey, right? So what I just told you about believing deeply in being there for my family and in cultivating awareness and empathy are foundational to my leadership, right? To my leadership journey. So to me, care, empathy, and awareness are big themes. I really believe that you have to care for people, for a mission. You have to be able to walk in other people's shoes, and you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror every day. Now, if you ask me about, sometimes we talk about our why, right? I mean, what's the, or what's your purpose and what's your why? It took me a long time to truly distill it to a few words, right? But today, to me, it's very clear that, I first like to slightly change a little bit the question, that rather than just what's your why, to think about why does it all matter in the end, right? Which is the same thing, but it's more, looking at like throughout, and then thinking what that end is, and then try to trace it back, right? So what does it all matter in the end? And I think, to that question, thinking through that question all the time has had a profound effect on me. At the end of the day, the only thing that will have mattered, I strongly believe, is how we impacted other people's lives, right? In which way we impacted other people's lives. Clayton Christensen, Harvard Business School professor, died a couple of years ago. The father of disruptive innovation, right? Seminal work with Innovator's Dilemma. Wrote one book called "How Will You Measure Your Life?" So he took it completely outside of the business school, very, very well connected to what you're trying to do, Naji, here. And he really focused on how you're going to measure your life, right? And at the end of the day, he said, worry about the individuals you have helped become a better person. So I take that step back, right? And I really feel like at the end of the day, no matter what your why is, you have to look at that big picture, is that if you have not have impact in other people's lives, little will have mattered. That's my take on it. So that's a little bit of the anchor, right? On that from the personal to the leadership journey, and how that translates into trying to impact, whether it's patients through the work that we do, people through the talent that we develop, and the teams we build. That's a little bit of my take on it.
Yeah, and that's powerful, Sebastian. And as you said, you're combining both, right? Like the impact that you're having on the patients, you're leading today into multiple therapeutic areas, different diseases. You're trying to bring innovations for patients, and you also see it through the lens of the impact you have on your people, right? Like how you develop talent. I know you're passionate about them. Can you tell us a little bit more about how do you led through different organizations? What would you take from each one of those organizations as you're moving, and what are you bringing each time you're leading your team? What is the one thing, I would say, the common thread for Sebastian along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I was reflecting over the past now over 20 years. You mentioned I'm working for AbbVie right now, and I come from 5 years at Amgen and about 17 years right at Lilly before that. I would say that the 17 years at Lilly have been absolutely foundational to me. I learn a lot from different technical areas, but also from different leaders, managers, mentors, coaches, and I really feel like the foundations right were built there. Start talking about the particular work. Of course, I'm not going to start talking about each of the roles that I had, but I'm saying when I look at the big picture, independently of different responsibilities that I had, there was a big foundation there that helped me get to that second chapter. I learned, one of the big things that I learned is the importance of leading people through influence, and leading without authority. I had a lot of roles in which actually I was primarily an individual contributor, but I many times had to lead teams, how to lead organizations, whether it was for particular jobs or particular franchises or particular geographies, and I had to influence that. So, and it didn't come naturally. It didn't a perfect formula, right, that I knew how to do it. So that was probably the biggest foundation, to have multiple opportunities to prove myself through that influence and leading without authority. In my second chapter, right, with Amgen, I had the opportunity to take on a organizational leadership role. And then throughout the 5 years, get promoted within that role, increasing those responsibilities. So to me, one of the things that was critical is to understand that the role of a leader at the end of the day, right, and we can talk a lot about that, but has to do with, delivering results for the enterprise, for organization. It's very important to understand that. Shaping or cultivating and nurturing a culture of high performance, developing talent, and shaping the future, anticipating, right? Those dimensions about results, culture, talent, performance, and anticipation, shaping the future, are at the center of the work that you do. So to me, I mean, and now I'm in a different phase, but of course I carry, right, with those elements. Now, if I think about learning, because you say what are the one or two things, right, a couple of key learnings, I've been reflecting a lot on that, and particularly for new leaders or aspiring leaders or people that are just simply looking at how to complement the skill set. There are three things that have been for me important learnings when I look at those 20 years back, right, as a picture, as a movie, more than just a picture or different pictures. Three things: solution orientation, and I'll say a few words about it if you allow me. But solution orientation, execution, as I said before, and return on luck. And I'll expand on that for a second. By the way, I'm borrowing that term from Gene Collins. Good to great by choice. It's not my term, but it's something that when I read it and went back to it, I really think it's critical. So solution orientation. One of the most important things that at some point in my career, a mentor told me, but actually then later on, it came back also in a conversation with a really good boss. We were discussing different scenarios, is the idea that if you are not part of the solution, you risk being part of the problem, or worse, you are already part of the problem. So that kind of binary understanding, although life is much more complicated, right? Leadership is a lot nuanced, but there's a simple binary understanding that if you are not part of the solution, whether you want or don't want, whether it's accidental, by default, or whatever, you are part of the problem. Always take a moment, right, to look at the full picture. Wear as many hats as you can when analyzing a situation. Put in the shoes of decision makers. Think of alternatives, and then give an opinion, right, or take a stand. But remember that you must be solution-oriented, enterprise-minded. Avoid silos, right, and herd mentality. So don't become part of the problem. I know it sounds like a lot of words, right, but it's countless the amount of times that I realized sometimes I was not being at my best, And when I distill, right, to fundamental questions, I realize I'm being part of the problem if I'm not doing X, Y, or Z, right? Now, how to take action sometimes is not that easy, but then you have mentors, questions, you ask for help. But that binary thing is one of the things that actually helps me a lot, frame almost any situation. The second one, I said execution, and I don't want to dwell a lot on that, but I just want to say a word because it's another thing that through the years and to the leadership journey, I realize is critical, right? Leadership drives execution. And I know saying this doesn't take anything away from all the elements that are so critical about leadership. But at the end of the day, right, if you are not the one that enables things to get done at many levels, execution, as I said before, is also about building and nurturing a culture, developing talent. All that is execution, right?
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, you're not able to enable results. That leadership is limited. And I say this because many times new leaders or aspiring leaders or people that read, literature, leadership literature, like we all do, and there's fantastic things, sometimes get a little bit compartmentalized, right? Visionary, strategic, and sometimes we can tend to think that leadership is something that, yes, it has components of it, vision, strategy, of course, are critical, right? But, if you are not able, like I said, to drive execution at every level possible, that's going to be a fail or limited leadership. And the last thing, again, just quickly, is that return on luck, right? I realized, again, when I reflect back, I really feel like I've been extremely lucky in many situations. And luck is not that big strike of luck. Sometimes can happen, right? But that's like one big thing. I won the lottery, right? Or sometimes in a world like, oh my God, luck is present all the time. And it's that moment in which small windows of opportunity open, and sometimes there is someone that cares for you, a sponsor, someone that gave you an opportunity that, yes, you were qualified, but perhaps, well, there was someone else, right? There was something. So I always try to be very self-aware of small windows of opportunity that may open, right? Because of, let's say, luck in a bigger sense. Some people could call it, right, different thing, but let's say luck. Now, the reason why I say return on luck, and I repeat, it's not my term, but I always stuck with me, is that what this author, right, Jim Collins, right, Good to Great, and that was talking about is that the important thing is that what you do with that, right? And now is when it comes, the hard work you put and how you look at that as if it were an investment that someone gave you. And then how you're going to now be hardworking, strategic, and make it compound, right, over time. And that's why he talks about return on luck. So it's something that always stuck with me. And thinking about also your theme, which I love, right? Spread love. I always have thought about luck in many respects as a random love, right? Random act of love that happened to us by, like I said, bosses, mentors, peers, colleagues, professors, right? And help us, right? Open something. Now, what are you going to do with it? So these are some of the things I've been reflecting on that I think are important to drive things forward in this leadership journey.
Yeah, the three of them are powerful. Not being part of the solution is just being part of the problem. I love this one, return on luck. And you talked about execution. I love how you said it's not the opposite. And I totally agree with you. Many times we think like, there is genuine care, there is the culture you build, there's the visionary leaders, and then there are those who execute.
Exactly.
No, it's like strong leaders, they care and they execute, right? Like I always say, it's love and discipline.
I love the way you say it.
Yeah, and you said
they
it beautifully.
Care and they execute.
Yeah, and you said it beautifully, right? Like you said, execute even on people. Like make sure you are developing people, hiring people, you are caring for them, growing them, and then executing on what's important for patients. I would love to do a small game with you. I know you love games. I'm gonna give you one word, and give me top of mind idea that comes. Okay, after this word. Great. So the first word, and we talked a lot about it, leadership.
I think I'm I'm gonna borrow what you said, care and execute. But no, I don't want to. No, leadership is it's an endless journey deep within yourself.
What about focus?
One of the most difficult things to achieve, discipline. Um, we were just talking a second ago, right? If I can say it, that, but we are the sum of our paid attention. We are the sum of our focus moments. So focus is the true multiplier.
Great. What about spread love in organizations?
Naji. No, very, very much needed. This not trite words, not just soft words. We live in a complex world. We can talk about a lot of things, but really making love the center of who we are, how we act, how we talk, how we think, and build strong organizations, families, friendships, enterprises, schools are probably the most important things that the world needs at this moment. So, foundational.
I profoundly agree with you. Moving forward, Sebastian, this passion that you have, for people, and you've worked across, obviously, the globe, international, US, all the different countries. I think you really worked in all the different continents,
Almost.
right? What is the key learning as you lead multiculturally with your, those two aspects that you talked about, your big heart and the willingness you have to learn about people and lead them, and then execute across those different geographies? Any big theme that you have?
No, it's a great question, and there's a lot of, particularly recently also, with the pandemic and remote working, and a lot of has been written recently, but of course it's been developed over a long time. But just if I had to say a couple of things anchoring this idea, right, of working across geographies, working with different cultures from a leadership perspective, I go a little bit back to what I said before, right? First of all, care. You have to care. You have to care for people. You have to care for idiosyncrasies. You have to care for learning. You have to care for how people think, to really understand, right? What are the needs, what are the opportunities, and where you can have the right impact. So cookie cutter approaches, trying to put everybody in the same bucket, it doesn't work. Now, I know that what I'm saying is obvious or sound obvious, but like you said before, talking about execution, right? That's the problem. Putting it in practice, that's what takes time. Because to say, well, you need to respect people, understand people different, yeah, it can be said. Now, how you interact with people, how do you adapt your style? So there's a big element about getting to know the people and getting to know the culture, getting to know the elements that are going to influence. And we can discuss, countless examples, but again, talking about effectiveness and execution, it will impact directly that. It will impact directly the ability to get things done in a certain way, because of how people feel at their best. So that first element of understanding, care is critical. The second one that I learned, over the years in working like this, like you're describing, geographies and different cultures, it has to do how you make the total, right? Let's say your organization, your team, assume it's multicultural, how you make that total much bigger than the sum of the parts. One thing that I learned, and it wasn't easy, it was not my first approach when I was working with international teams in some of my initial roles, probably now like 12 years ago or 13 years ago in some of those roles. One tend to think, okay, I learn about the people, I adapt about the people, and then I treat them a little bit like silos, right? So this works here, we execute this here. Now, where the magic comes is when you are able to, yes, adapt all that we said, but then bring them together right? To understand, okay, what are the elements that in that diversity, this brings me to the diversity topic, right? That diversity is going to become a tremendous strength. As I said before, it may sound like a trite word. Everybody talks about diversity. I did not know how to execute it, no matter how much I care, no matter how much time I dedicated. I did not see it clearly in many of my jobs. But in the last years, when I had to elevate the impact and I had a bigger responsibility, for example, at Amgen as vice president of the international region, and I had to a different level of understanding, it's probably one of the first times that I realized the amount of strength you can have in diversity. And when you let people know and you let them play at their best in who they are, then where you do stretch assignments, signature projects, things that are going to go above and beyond, right, to shape a particular capability. Again, I'm talking very concrete things, right? Things that need to happen. You can make it happen just by, just treating people as silo and then dedicate 20% of this, 30% of that, X% of FTE, or you can try to truly create magic in that diversity. So that's where, to me, in my journey, that sweet spot, right, came. Starting with that care, dedicating the time, truly understanding where and how people work at their best, but then how you make that group, let's say in this case a group, or how make that total much bigger than the sum of the parts. That's when you go into high performance. That's when you are, let's say, you are recognized by the enterprise and the impact you can have, because then they connect with everything. You deliver results, you build bigger things, you develop talent. You learn that you give to the best talent the boldest challenges, and you don't make them feel afraid of failure. So those things, again, don't come easy, but that takes you in another dimension of leadership, and multicultural environments, and a beautiful place for that.
And as you're talking about it, I was thinking again, like you're a great leader, and again, across companies you've done it, and you're a physician. And I didn't hear your story. I would love to hear your story. You said it was pure chance that you joined the pharma. So how did you do this move? Tell us a little bit about the story behind the scenes of Sebastian being in the pharma industry and now impacting so many patients every day.
No, it's a great question. And to be honest with you, it's something that has been, with me many years, because I had to be honest, I'm going to say something very vulnerable. For many years, I felt a little bit guilty or a little bit confused about, no, I need to go back, right? I want to be with patients. So I was a little bit conflicted that as I was progressing in my early years. But then, of course, I felt so blessed, so lucky, and I tried to do my best, right, to create return on that luck, right? But the way it happened was, to make it short. I have started. I was in the residency for ultimately do critical care. So I was internal medicine, and I was going to do critical care, right? In the early ages, the early stage, actually happened very early in my career. It was never planned. At the same time, I had been an assistant professor of pharmacology at university. So I mention this because it's important. I always like pharmacology, I like teaching, and I was thinking about doing research, but without really knowing, right, what it really was. And in parallel, the third element, while I was preparing for the residency and when I started, I took the exams, the ECFMG, the USMLE steps, right, for applying eventually for residency in the US, and I passed those exams. But all that was happening together. Well, I realized that to come to the US and do the national residence matching program and try to apply for residency, I need to have money to travel, to go to hotels, to interview. I have no money. So it was impossible. So okay, let's put that in the back burner. Hopefully, when I finish, maybe it can come with a fellowship, right? Complete different plans. So I was in that early years, and the combination between always thinking about pharmacology and research. I ended up doing then studies on clinical pharmacology, but that came a little later. But always thinking about pharmacology and research. And just coincidentally, I was in a path for critical care. Lily, I was in Argentina. It was in the late stage of development of a product for sepsis, septic shock, recombinant human activated protein C. And it was fascinating science, right? I happen to know, so look at lack, not thinking about lack, thinking about windows of opportunity, right? So I know it sounds complicated story, but there are so many elements. The medical director of Eli Lilly in Argentina at that moment happened to be the older brother of my best friend in elementary school. Totally, and because of that, one day I went to talk to him saying, listen, I'm teaching pharmacology, doing this. I would like, think about research. I know you work in my mind, I didn't know much. I thought it was clinical research, right? Part of the industry and some advice. But thinking about a career down the road. And through that, a couple of very informal and innocent conversations on my end, and because of this product for severe sepsis, septic shock being in development, and me coincidentally being in the residency for critical care, he said, well, I know it's interesting. I have an opportunity and a position that I'm going to open. And I would like actually to hire a junior physician, relates a little more for clinical operations, right? Sort of a CRA type of job, but actually with other responsibilities. And there was also an opportunity for an idea for potential, finally didn't pan out, but I want to mention it, for potential looking into things like hemolytic syndrome, potential things, diseases, right, that were related to that product could treat. And my brother, one of my brothers, when he was a child, had that disease. It was just informal conversations. But because of all that, when he said, well, I'm going to open this position, could be a good experience for you to have a look at what happens here, what is done. We can step out of the practice for 1 year and then you can come back. It just, so now I'm bringing it home, right? What was totally unexpected for me or innocent, or even when I decided to make the step, I thought, okay, 1 year, I get this sort of rotation, if you will, and then I go back. Well, 1 year turned into two into 2.5, 3, and then a proposal to come to the US with Lilly to Indianapolis for a regional job. And that's how it started. So there were so many random events, so many things that disconnected, I mean, in isolation, have no connection, but they all came to this conversation with this person that opened that window of opportunity that once I realized, right, the journey I was in, particularly when I moved to the US, I always try to put a lot of effort, right, to return on that lack, right? But that's how it started, completely unexpected, early in my career. But like you said, down the road, 22, 23 years after, I feel extremely blessed, right? Because it's been a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, and well, you've brought so many, you let so many therapeutic areas and innovative medications get to patients across the world, right? Like you should be proud with your team of what you've been doing in the pharma. Sebastian, a final word of wisdom for all those leaders, growing leaders, as you mentioned in the beginning, in our word.
Yes, that's an interesting one. I will go back to a big theme of mine, and I think I said things along these lines throughout the conversation. I even put it at the center of my definition of leadership, right? I think I said endless journey deep within yourself or something like that. My word of wisdom, if I may call it that way, is look in the mirror. Don't lie to yourself. Embrace expectations, create leaders around you. But at the core of it, to me, is self-awareness. And I just want to say a few words about it because it's extremely important. I learned over the years that has been critical for me, to be honest with you, also to be able to return on that lack, right? The ability to reflect on what you are doing well, not, the ability to take on feedback, the ability to reflect on your performance, the ability to absorb, right, when things don't go well, a performance evaluation or a feedback that you realize, well, that's not how I think I was coming across, right, or how I thought I was coming across. But remember that your biggest weapon, your superpower, that sometimes people like to say these days a lot, I truly believe that your superpower is your self-awareness. And even more than that, your worst enemy or your kryptonite, if we want to go with the idea of superpower, right, is self-deception. And that is one of the things, right, that I learned, because it's not enough just to it's not enough to cultivate self-awareness, which is critical, but it's extremely important to fight self-deception, right? Deceiving oneself, lying to oneself. So, in two words, right? Don't cheat the person in the mirror. That will help you go a long way.
Great. Thank you so much, Sebastian, for such a genuine discussion. It has been amazing having you in my podcast, and thanks again for your openness and really being yourself with us today.
Thank you, Naji. For me, it's like I said, a real pleasure. I have a lot of care for you, but also a lot of respect for the things that you've done and your career, your growth, your leadership journey. For me, it has been an honor to have this opportunity with you.
Thank you all for tuning in. Connect with us and listen to more inspiring stories on SpreadLoveIO.com. Subscribe to your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any of our weekly episodes. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would like to welcome you to leave an honest review. Let's stay in touch on SpreadLoveIO social media and keep spreading love in your organization.